Okay, team, this week we are heading across the ditch to talk to a lovely lady by the name of Yvonne Hilsz, and she is an award-winning sales trainer and coach. She helps teams sell with confidence and empower leaders to lead properly. Yvonne, you're in Sydney. I'm in New
Yes.
Zealand. How are you?
Very good. Very good. Excited for this. Lovely to connect.
Good. So, do you want to give people a bit of a very quick rundown on how you got to where you are? You're obviously very well awarded, very lucky to get very clever people like you on the show. Like, how did you get to where you are? Like, you've got obviously a track record of sales, you've sold on the front line,
Yep.
you work with some pretty impressive people and businesses, Woolies, Coles, all the off license. This real alcoholic kind of, I'm not saying alcoholic,
A lot
but
of
real
booze. Yep.
alcohol booze sales.
It
Tell
does.
the people about your background.
It actually started in New Zealand. I moved to New Zealand when I was 17 to Auckland, went to Selwyn College and had great dreams of becoming a actress. Then when I couldn't get onto Shortland Street, which I had auditioned for about 3 or 4 times in my years, I then started in hospitality. So my dad was part of the Southern Pacific hotel chain, which was Centra Hotel in Auckland there. So I really cut my teeth into hospitality, where I learnt the art of selling through delivering great service. And I was very good, and I can be humble about that. And I'd always get tipped very well. And I moved out of the hotel chain after a quick stint down in Mount Cook as well. But I really started to learn that when you can connect with people and find out what they want and give it to them and put a bit of razzle dazzle to create some entertainment in their dining experience. I enjoyed it, but it translated very well to a great experience for the customers. And back then I'd get tips. So that was commercially very successful for me as well. After I think about 3 years of hospo, I went into retail, and Sportsgirl, which is an Australian brand, had just launched in Auckland in the atrium underneath, ironically, the old Centra Hotel. And that's when I really started to carve out my ability to not only be very good at selling, and I had my own wing, and I was very young. I was only about 20, 21, and I rose into management very quickly, not only because I could sell, but I could also train. And my dad was a trainer. He taught in HR, head of HR for a huge company. So I'd been in some of his training rooms and I'm a chip off the old block. So I started to get an understanding that I could not only sell myself, but I could help educate and influence other team members to get better. And I didn't have any of the formal training that I do now, but there's a natural gift of the gab, and then being very motivated and confident. But that's when I started to learn the art of training and went into management, assistant manager, store managers, opened up chains within the Sports Girl. We opened up 17 stores in 18 months. So I then became, unbeknownst to me, a sales trainer, but it wasn't known as that. I was the area manager. And I fell in love with it, again, without realizing what I was doing. New Zealand is my stomping ground for starting my whole career as to what I now do. Yeah.
So we obviously have listeners all over the place. We have them in the UK, we have in Canada, we have in America. We're not just a little old New Zealand, which is lovely, but nice international audience, big grain guys in Saskatchewan or Alberta or Manitoba and all that kind of stuff. I'm interested. Obviously, your dad had a huge influence on you. I can hear that. And he was obviously very interested in people, and you said around the service. And so did that come from dad? And how did you get interested in sales and people? Because I think in order to be really good at sales, you've got to be really good at people.
Yeah. Look, I think because I'd grown up with dad being a trainer in TAFE and then in HR, and I would be sitting in his rooms as an employee of the hotel chain, much to his, he would always be embarrassed when I'd first be found in the room. But I started to really see that when you pay attention to people and are interested in people, that you can really start to figure out how to build rapport. And I did go and do professional training as an actor and had a big career in the non-professional world as an actor. So it was a really easy leap for me to move into being a speaker and then a coach, because I was so good and comfortable on being on stage. So I didn't see it as a big leap where I know some people have. But I also just really loved making people feel great, whether it was giving them a great experience on a Friday night when they came out for dinner. And I was really good at selling both in menswear and women's wear, because I'd be honest. I'd say to them, this looks great, this doesn't look great, which would trip people up. It'd be nice, wouldn't be too brutal. I really loved the impact that I could make with someone walking away, whether it was one piece of item or a whole suit or a whole swagger stuff, that they walked out feeling good about themselves. And that's still today all my workshops, it's that whole feeling that whether they like being in group training or not, or if they're uncomfortable with some of the challenges that we're putting them through in the sales training, but I really want to help them feel more confident. And I could see I could do that both when I was in hospitality and then definitely when I was going into more traditional selling, which was in retail. And I loved it. And I still do now,
Really?
that element of it.
I've got so many questions to ask on that. Okay, where do you think true confidence comes from?
I think a lot of it, and I talk about this in a lot of my programs, is the building up of capability and competency helps you get confident. And I think there's definitely some X factor. Like you and I train people who've got a natural X factor for reading people and being able to sell, even if they haven't been trained. And then
some of them, not all of them.
Not all of them, no. But competency and capability, and if someone's believing in you and helping you see a bit more into your own future of what's possible, you can baby step your way through to becoming more confident that you then can start to take bigger steps and bigger risks. But it's the right type of steps and the size of the step, I think that's so critical, so that if you do wobble, if you do fall over, which is all part of life, it doesn't break you. It instead goes, okay, dust it off, let's keep moving forward.
Yeah. So what do you think of that concept? I won't skew my response, but, fake it till you make it. What's your response to that one?
I've done it, and it's probably there'll still be times when I do it. I think for some people, it can be the bridge of them building on their confidence, because it's like, well, act as if you can already do it. I think it all depends. Like, I don't like it in the sense that it can be misconstrued and seen as really disingenuous and there's the fakeness to it. And I think you can do that in so many aspects of what we do in selling. But I think for some people, giving them a bit more bravado to go, act as if you could close this deal, or act as if you could do a cold call, so that they can start to build the muscle or the repetition. I think there's a healthy way you can use the fake it till you make it. And like in anything, there's the spectrum where it could be quite damaging to someone.
Yeah. Well answered. I agree with that. So like kind of acting their way into, because it's interesting because you want from your acting career, it's really interesting you're coming from that area of acting your way into it, or an identity shift of being in it, because some people don't know their true potential, right? And sort of, I'm not talking like Todd Herman to ego effect or...
Oh yeah, I love Todd Herman.
Yes, he was in my coaching group. So you've trained the big boys, the big retail FMCGs. You talked about Sports Girl, Woolies, Woolworths, thousands, and roll them all off. Like you've got that retail hospo background. You back yourself. When we reached out, you said, I want to talk about this whole 4 performance types in sales teams. Is this sales team segmentation, sales team personas? What is it? Unpack it for me.
Yeah, look, it's actually broader than sales, but obviously I specialize in sales and service teams, where when I go into an organization, I'm often being asked by the leadership team or owners, how to figure out what to do with the different people in their teams. And I work in organizations where I might go and there's thousands of people in a team. So it's looking to how they can quickly sort the 4 performance types in their teams. So then we can start to figure out, well, rather than having a cookie cutter approach or a one size fits all, which doesn't work, how do we do a one size fits one approach? So you can really go, they need a bit more of this, they need less of that. So the 4 performance types, it's not my IP, but it's looking at there's underperformers, solid performers, great performers, and high performers. And we cross-reference it between performance and potential. Culture Amp, a great HR company, did some research couple of years ago where they interviewed over 200,000 employees across 721 different organizations. And they roughly came to the same data that I usually see when I go into and let's say, I won't say average, but a fairly regular business team, where if I look at the 4 quadrants, I usually see about 10% of the team are high performers. So they're setting new standards. Now, if I go into a high performing team, I'm going to see a higher percentage in that quadrant. But what's interesting for me is that the bulk of the business in their team, usually about 75%, sit between a great and a solid performer. Now, sometimes it might be more solid, or sometimes it might be more great. But look, if you've got a team of great and solid performers, you're kicking goals. You've got great performers who are exceeding expectations, and you've got solid performers who are meeting expectations. And then the 4th quadrant is underperformers. Typically, it's usually 5% or less for me when I go in, unless I'm going into a distressed team, or it's toxic leadership, or a toxic team and the leadership aren't addressing it, then there might be a bigger section. Broadly speaking, it's like 10% at the top, 75% in the middle, 5%. Does that maths add up?
I think that underperformers is underrepresented. I think there's a lot more people in sales that underperform than 5%.
Correct. And So when I map out this 4-quadrant with teams, because I do a lot of coach-to-coach programs, it's getting them to think about, well, what does an underperformer need different to a solid performer, to a great, to a high? And whilst I have my three common questions for coaching is what's working, what's not, and how can I help? But there's differences and nuances that each of these 4 quadrants need. And everyone's busy. No one's got enough time. No one's sitting at their office or their desk or their counter twiddling their thumbs going, oh, I've got nothing to do today. I might think about my team and where they all sit on the quadrant. So this is a quick way for an owner or a team to go, where do I put my people? And maybe looking at it through this lens where it's over the quadrant, that they go, it makes sense why certain regions of my teams are doing this, or certain shifts. I see this with some of my retailers. They go, this is why my Thursday nights aren't getting the same results as my Fridays, because I don't have any great or high performers on the Thursday night. So see if you can change your rostering and then build up the capacity. But the underperformers are really interesting, because I see there's almost 2 subcategories. You've got your underperformers who are new. Now, when we've got new team members, we have an onboarding process. We often have adjusted KPIs to account for the fact that unless they're coming, with experience, they're not yet hitting performance and potential yet. Our goal is to build that up. So usually underperformers in the new team member category is not what leaders or sales leaders talk to me the most about, because they've often got a good training process, hopefully, even in some of the big ones.
Some of the worst culprits, but anyway, that's
we can talk for days. I'm never surprised. But it's the underperformers who are existing team members who do know what's expected and choose not to do it. And that's usually the really target that I then will help support the business on, because they need real structure. We need to ensure that, do they actually know what to do? Even if they've been there for a while, they might not. They've just bluffed their way through or not. And as I say to my teams, sometimes the outcome is that we can move them up, which I put in hope and possibility for the best in everyone. However, in business, it doesn't always go that way. So the outcome might be we release them from the business. And I remember I spoke at a huge conference, would have been 2010. It was for Woolworths, actually. There was their Drinks Academy, and I had Dan Murphy's and BWS teams, and I did 3 keynotes back to back, tens of thousands of people going through this auditorium for me to teach them this content. And I remember I had a different methodology back then. The language has evolved. And I said the outcome might be to release your team. And I heard one guy at the front row turn to the other person and goes, she's just said we can fire our people. And I heard the HR team around gasp and clutch their pearls. And then I said, with good HR policies.
Can I use a different R word? I mean, I might be showing my naivety. What about reveal? Reveal your people.
Well, you'd certainly, the process of doing a one-size-fits-one approach for coaching is to understand really what actually is going on for them. And some of that is revealing that they're not a good fit, and you must protect your culture.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we don't muck around on this show. You call it for what it is. It's like, I mean, for you, Yvonne, we can get straight into this. Like, what do you do with people that don't want to be trained?
Well, our goal is to create a structured plan so there's real clarity of what to do, what not to do, so we can take out the ambiguity and the vagueness that might have been in place prior. So then that person has the opportunity to either step up and step into the aligned values that the company has, or with good HR policies, you've got options to then help them either reveal that this isn't the place for them, and either they make the decision, or good policies in place to support you to make that decision for them.
Cool. But and I know we're not HR. We're not HR legal guys, and you go and get your advice from around, because we're not saying reveal, release, fire everyone, everything else. I think what is my lived experience has been that there's a certain bunch of people in the room that don't want to be there. Correct. And HR have sent them, and they're either going to fit in or they're going to do the other F off. FIFO, not fly in, fly out. Yes. Different FIFO in our world. Yeah. So sorry, we're just pretty straight up. I think coachability is so important in people. What do you think?
100%. And it is their responsibility for their own life. And if they're not prepared to take on the resources and take, align themselves to the business's values and et cetera, then it is my responsibility to the team to protect the culture. And if you keep someone in a business that's not prepared to do the work, what you're prepared to walk past is what you're prepared to accept. And if you accept that, then you don't. And interesting, because when I go through the 4 quadrants and the 4 performance types, the underperformers usually are quite quick. You can usually identify them. I mean, I can walk into a room and you can spot them a miles away usually.
Pretty much. Body language, engagement.
Just how they present themselves. Yep. There's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
But what's interesting when I talk to business owners and leaders, I said, the the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So either
Correct.
the underperformer gets a lot of oil, the solid performers do, because you're wanting to build up capacity. But the danger is the high performers are the least managed and coached. Why? Because they technically don't need it half the time. So they think, and also I don't know if you have this experience, but I'll often have, when I look at the high performers, they are closing and their conversion is through the roof.
Oh, and the 80-20 Pareto principle all day long. Yeah.
Oh, and when I talk to the management team and go, do you know that you're not giving enough time and you've got to have a cadence for your high performers.
Yeah.
You can't just leave them out in the field and not
No.
have some, grab a coffee and walk. I talk to some of my retailers, like high performers, grab a coffee and walk.
Oh, high performers I know, they will know exactly how they're tracking. They're highly competitive. Now, I know you'll know this answer, my friend, because we're like lost friends from different places, but we share the same kind of vibe and the same situations. Can you explain to the audience, I know you're going to answer this, what's the problem if you ignore your high performers at the expense of basically looking after your low performers? Give me the answer.
So the impact is double. You lose a high performer, you lose their output, whether they're sales, service, whatever it is, their tenure, their experience, their ability to generate sales effortlessly. But the double impact is that it doubles, if not triples, the workload of the leadership team, because they've now got a huge hole to fill and they might not have any succession planning in their team.
Yeah.
And because the high performers are often very rarely coached, and the reason why I find that they're not coached or given the space for it is because often the leadership team have never converted at that level, and they go, how could I coach that person? I've never sold that much. I mean, I've got a guy who closes $4 million a year in a call center selling a product over the phone. Now, I have certainly not sold in his industry in a call center for 18 years like he has, $4 million worth of this product each year. I don't need to. My analogy is like in sports. In most sports teams, the coach has never been the best player in the team, but they've been a brilliant coach.
Yes.
Now, absolutely, there are some coaches who are extraordinary players who've moved into coaching, but it's not the case in all. Yet, they can coach the best players because they know what questions to ask, they know how to shape and mold them without it being through their lived experience having hit those highs. And so I say to a lot of the leadership and management teams, like, don't compare your standards or your success to what your high performer is. You've got to hold space for them. And 99% of the time, you just need to listen. And then you go, what's working, what's not, how can I help? They're not looking for tactical coaching. They're looking to go, I need to be a vent, I'm a bit annoyed about X, Y, Z. Or most of the time, they'll unpack their problems to me and I'll go, that's so interesting. Ask a couple of questions and they'll go, got it. Thanks for the chat, John.
So good. I've got one of those guys. He sells a whole ton of machinery, probably outsells everyone else 8 to 2 or whatever it is. Classic 80-20. And sometimes all he wants to do is just have a rant with me. And he just wants to offload and it's cathartic for me. Yeah, exactly. And then he goes, oh, good, thanks, see ya. And he's gone and he's happy as Larry and off he goes. So it's like
just saying it out loud, they unpack their own problem and they just by saying it, they're like, sorry, I got it, I figured it out by just saying
ask them a couple of questions. The analogy I use, I love your sports leader analogy and coach. I also like the idea of the band manager. The star of the show needs to perform. Now Taylor Swift needs to perform, but her manager isn't hogging the limelight and getting on the stage and grabbing the mic and doing the dancing, the choreography and all the lights and actions and fireworks. They're basically just making sure, can Swifties just be amazed by this performance? So how can I help clear the debris and get all the crap and the admin and the shit out of the way and who's annoying you and be that band manager? So I love holding the space for the high performers. If you don't coach your high performers and acknowledge them, the risk is the high performers go, well, bollocks to that. You're spending all the time with the low performers, I'm gone. So the quickest, fastest way to lose your high performers is to ignore them and focus on, because I think there's sometimes that, like, this is where we're unpacking it, is this obsession with trying to sort underperformance versus fix. It's like, I think it was Southwest Airlines. They looked at their customer satisfaction and the management group said, we need to focus on the 1s and 2s and 3s. They're really dissatisfied. They said, no, the biggest bang for buck is the 5s, the 6s, the 7s, what I call magic in the middle, who then put tension on the top. Because you know those top performers, they can hold you to ransom if you're not.
Yeah, they can.
Right? What are your thoughts on that?
I agree, because the lifting a great performer to a high performer takes less effort than moving a solid to a great performer. But moving an underperformer even up to a solid performer takes so much bandwidth. And that's where I question some of the managers. Go, you got to be really careful. Like your all-time poor, you must hear it every day. I hear it every day. It's like if you've got only so many hours in the day and you've got all these other competing priorities, which let's be honest is inbox and meetings for sake of meetings, you've got to figure out where am I going to get the best bang for my buck, and who also has the ability by them lifting to new heights also by default lifts up other team members, even if they're not coaching or mentoring, but they're showing what else is possible. And that's where I say protect your culture. Don't muck around with your underperformers. Get them on a structured plan. Be swift. Use your HR policies. But then, moving the needle of your solid and your great performers is going to give you such bigger results. They're 85% of the team. So it's a lot of volume that they're producing as well. But if you can get some of those greats moving into the high performer, you've de-risked, because if you've only got one or two,
very important
I've seen
point.
some really interesting exit interviews in some of the organisations where I'm a lot deeper in the team, where a high performer's moved and everyone goes, oh, it's because someone snapped them up with big money. I'm like, not always. I mean, we've got some industries here in Australia where I work with.
It's usually the manager, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not the money.
Yeah, exactly. Because I work with some regional remote businesses here where they are losing great qualified team members into the mines, and the mines are throwing $150,000 extra on, a great mechanic. And fresh coffee and bean bags in the staff room ain't going to retain someone when a mine's going to.
Don't forget slides and
exactly.
And stuff like that.
A friend of mine works in a business with a slide, but I said sometimes the high performer is exhausted, feeling like they're holding up the team, like they are responsible for so much of the results, and they don't feel appreciated. And so that's where, again, understand all your people anyway, but make sure you've got a good cadence and rhythm to ensure that you've got all four quadrants being addressed, not just the squeaky wheels, which is the danger, because they're the obvious ones. Fire fast if you need to, and then really build on your team's capability.
I love that advice. That's such good advice. Okay, so let's get into managers.
Yeah.
You talk about coaching the coaches, training the trainers, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
I always say, and I love what you think about this, I always say, show me the manager, I'll show you the team.
100%.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. You can, if someone's hiding behind in their desk, guarantee there's no coaching happening on. I always love the ones who are really well known within their team, because it means that they're actually walking the floor, connected to their team. I mean, I work in a lot of retail and call centers where they're all quite visible with each other, but I work with businesses where they're still remote as well. You can tell the ones who are really driven either, and look, there's different types of personalities too, that whether they're really people focused or report focused or systems focused, etc. So I do understand the different lens that someone's naturally looking through when they are, connecting to their team. But as a manager, they've got to, again, figure out how do I connect to the individuals in my team as well as lead my team, even if it's very different to who I am naturally. So, I'm naturally very relationship oriented, very people first focus. But absolutely, I have to sit in a space which might be more report and systems and structured. You wouldn't hire me to just look at systems and structures all day, because you'd see a very sad, lonely Yvonne rocking the corner gently.
You don't strike me as a spreadsheet queen.
I do when it comes to sales, and I had this.
You do.
I remember numbers too.
You'd be sitting behind a desk. You'd be someone walking around and
you're
done with your woolies and your sports clothes. You'd be rallying the troops. You'd be out front. You wouldn't be hiding behind a desk on Excel. No,
and look, my whole thing is the transference of energies. As a leader, as a manager, I think they've got to be able to look at how they influence things through good energy with their people, as that impacts how good sales happen because of good transference of energy. If that salesperson's in a really bad headspace and the energy is low, I don't care how good the script is or the words or the product even, that energy transference is going to be critical in the success of that person, because we're in such a competitive market on anything now. I don't have to buy my stuff from you. If I get bad service, and you're not the only person I can get a product from. And I am a high energy person, which is not everyone's cup of tea, but I can lift people. And I think that's what drives good sales. You adapt your energy. I talk about in building rapport, how we connect with people and close the gap between them and ourselves of pace, speed, volume, words, etc. Talk about how not to do accents, which sometimes happens in contact centers in particular. When I go through it all, but the key number one driver for connecting and building rapport in sales, which for me is also service, is your energy, your vibe, as some of them would say to me. And I said, you don't want to be too far from the person. If they're really low and you're super high, well, you'll be annoying. But equally, if they're really hyper and you're low vibe, they're not going to feel like you're on the same page. So we don't want to become match and mirror and kind of mimic them. But I said, you've got to be flexible and adapt.
Yeah, I think that's lovely. Like, you've got to kind of read the room, and we can get into personas, which we won't have time for, but that emotional contagion. But you've done this way more than me, because you've done hundreds of thousands of people with retail and fast-moving consumer goods, which we'll get into. But when you listen to call recordings, what are you listening for? You've talked about the energy transference. Yeah. What else do you listen for? Because I tell you what, my rural guys they are really bad at the granularity and the specificity of the coaching. They don't listen to the guys, and they rely on self-reported bias where the reps, self-defense say, oh, yeah, it was a great bloody meeting. I had a great meeting with Bill the farmer, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And they got no freaking idea, because they didn't see it and they didn't watch the game live. They just got the edited highlights. So when you've sat in these very big businesses, these big corporates, and these guys they're no schmucks. They're like proper big $billion businesses, right? Woolies alone, and Countdowns and BWSs and Dan Murphys and stuff like that. What are you specifically listening for when you're reviewing the calls or teaching the managers to review the calls? What are you teaching? We talked about the energy transference, which is very, very key.
Yep. For the managers, I have to get them to park as much as they can their bias about the person, because I'm an external consultant coming in, and I'll do this when I had a big contract with Seller Masters for about 7 years, where I was hired to run a sales training boot camp I created for them. And I was training 3 or 4 boot camps a month of 3-day training.
That's intense.
Yeah. And sometimes would squeeze in extras as they're getting into their business.
How was your energy transfer?
I can train for 7 days a week. The biggest thing I have for managers is they have such a bias for what they see as the possibility of their team. And I get that. They work with them intimately, where I just come in and might do a short program, etc. But I'm not there in the day-to-day. And I'll often hear different things. So my coaching is different, because I'm not ingrained by who they've been and what they are and all the other stuff. So I look at it through a very different lens and go, well, let's see what else you can do. And I remember I had a team where I was brought into an inbound sales team where they were answering calls from a catalog and taking credit cards manually and writing them down. I won't name the company, but back then there was no security like there is now. And they had a segment of items that they could upsell, and the conversion rate was, the KPI was 18%. I was hired to come in because the average was sitting at about 12%. And I said, all right, I'll write a program for you. And this was about 15 years ago. So I took a pilot team of about 10. This is a 78-seat call center. And I said, give me your best, your middle, and give me all 4 performance types. And they're like, oh, no, we don't want to invest in the underperformers. And they said, oh, we won't give you the top performers because they're already converting at their best. I said, no, I need all segments. So I said, let's give them to me for a week and I'll see what I can do. Their top performer at the time was converting 32% of all inbound calls, so 1 in 3. The underperformers were converting about 2%. Volumes of calls were fairly similar, but some saw themselves in sales, they got commission. Others said, I'm just here to answer the phone. By the end of the 5 days, I got the top performer up to 76% conversion. And the team were like, oh my God. They're like, we thought 32 was his best. I said, yeah, but I'm coming through with a different lens. And I managed to get the 2%ers up to about 10%. That was as much as I could get them up, but that was a great success. But overall, we lifted the whole entire floor. And the managers kept coming up to me going, how did you do that? I said, well, I don't know these people, so I'm not scarred by their story or seasoned by their story. I've seen all their stats and results, because everything's measured in call centers, including sneezes, which I joke at. They don't measure sneezes, but pretty much. Wow. So I said, I've seen the data, but I said, I also know it's some proper training, which they hadn't done proper sales training. Any kind of training would have helped them. But I said, I listened to what they saw as their gaps and where they didn't see themselves as being able to sell. So I could really customize some of this within a broad training session. But I said, I also don't hold limits to them, because unless they've had training and good coaching and a different environment to be part of, the world is their oyster. And I said, I need to hold space for them to step into that new future and possibility. But if I keep looking at who they were or who they think they are, they're never going to get out of their own way. So some of that's also the advantage of being an external. I have that ability to come in with quite a clean slate, which I love. Also makes it difficult because you've got to rapidly figure out who they are and what they do. So that's my challenge I find for managers, because they do get a bit stuck with who they're looking at and go, I've worked with them before, they've not been able to change. It's like, okay, but let's look at giving you some new skills on how to coach and train and change the environment. But in the tactical things, I'm listening to how they introduce themselves. Most people go, hey, it's just so-and-so. I'm like, take the just out. You're not just so-and-so, you're so-and-so. That can be enough to kind of really shift the position for them on the phone. A lot of the time it's how they're approaching the phone with their own resourcefulness. So I spend a lot of time when I go into offices adjusting people's desks. It's like, sit up straight, stop hunching. Physically, let's move you so you're sitting up straight. You've got more oxygen to breathe.
I've just started sitting up straight.
Yeah, no, me too. And then I always say to everyone in every workshop, I mean, you and I, we have our talking tracks that we think are funny, but they tend to be, is that I call
them bad jokes, but yeah.
And I say, you need to drink more water. I said, two things are going to happen, whether you're sitting in a call center or even sitting in training rooms. It hydrates and lubricates the brain. And I'd say all of us are most probably underhydrated. And I said, the second thing is it's going to make you go to the bathroom. So you physically have to move so you can change your state. Because in sales, if someone gets stuck physically and they're kind of hunched and they're making phone calls or they're looking at their leads or they're answering emails and they're physically getting quite down.
Stuck. Yeah, they're in a rut.
Sell well. And I can hear that over the phone.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. You can hear things better than I can, but when I listen to my rural reps calls, I'm looking for curiosity. I'm looking for the quality of their questions, alignment. I love your thing around the energy transfer. If they're high energy. If they're low, and don't blow them up. But I always think like that first 30 seconds, whether it's inbound or outbound, is absolutely crucial. Critical. What would you say to that?
And even more so now because the amount of scam phone calls coming through or bot phone calls. My 12-year-old's like, Mum, was that a scammer? It's like, yeah. Or a bot. You can hear the bots. And also if they're in a call center or even if they've got a system where it's dialing, there is a delay that the dialer has that even is 3 seconds. It's enough for someone to go, this isn't a person I know. It's
going back into my predictive click and whir machine of my brain.
Yeah. And none of us, I mean, apart from the few people like myself in the industry who want to hear from random call centers, most people, if their phone rings and it's an unknown number or a number that they haven't got stored, immediately we're thinking, this is someone wanting to sell me something.
Really? This is why I teach my team to pre-text, particularly in the US.
warm up the call. Because no one wakes up in the morning going, I hope some salesperson sells me something. And if they do, let's get their number.
Look, it's a punishing job, but I love the idea of moving around. Energy. Like when you're listening to the calls, what are the key things you're listening for? Tone. Tell me about tone and intonation. I think, or intonation, that is crucial. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm listening to make sure that they're not too overly excited at the beginning of the call, because that can be really off-putting for some people. Like, oh my gosh, a happy clappy's on the phone trying to sell me something. No,
hi, Brian. How you going?
Like, it's like a Labrador. Or they're coming in too flat because they've already given up. My observations with dealing with high performers, they go into a call expecting a yes and surprised at a no, where underperformers or solid performers are expecting a no and they're surprised by the yes. So they approach the call very different. They're either defeated at first and like, particularly acquisition or cold calls, which are hard. But I'm looking, if I've got a really experienced salesperson, they're very even keel. It's just like, I'm here. I'm expecting a good response from this customer, but it's my job to create that. But they're not pushing into the call. They're like, hey, it's Yvonne from so-and-so. How's your day? They don't ask, is it you? Because that's a number one trigger for someone to go, well, you phoned my mobile. Why are you asking if my name's
and also you've just completely destroyed my status.
Or, the classics of is now a good time to talk, which...
Well, of course it's not, because you completely called me out of the blue. Yeah.
Exactly. Unless it's an existing client, then there's a respect level of that.
Yvonne, super quick question.
I mean, there's some really interesting cold call tactics that you have to be quite brave, I think, and courageous to crack onto that, which some of my audiences, that's not the style.
I'm on the fence. I think some of them pattern interrupts work well, and we know all those guys and girls that do it. Now, I want to get into this whole concept because you talk about confidence and competence and capability, and we talked about the 4 performance quadrants and stuff, which is really, really useful. Tell me about mindset. Like, because what you just touched on that lightly with the high performers. I love what you said. You said the high performers go in expecting
and
A
surprised with
yes
a
and
no.
surprised with a no. So
Yeah.
how do you cultivate that mindset?
So I think there's a number of things. It's first of all, I address that elephant in the room, particularly with the underperformers and solid performers, where I'll ask them, what are you thinking just before you pick up the call? So they can start to connect, oh, my thoughts are controlling this call before I've even started it. Because people don't feel, a lot of the time, people don't realize that they actually can control their own thoughts and pattern interrupt. They just think their thoughts run away with them and therefore they're out of their control. It's like, well, no, you only have to look at super athletes. You see them coaching themselves often while they're on the pitch or
Yeah.
whatever, because they're knowing that they've got to control their own thoughts. They're not a runaway train. And mindset for me is where I get them to really, really unpack, what are you thinking before you get into the call? Oh, I think this call is going to be really hard. Oh, that person doesn't want to talk to me. And I said, so how does that make you feel? Like, I don't feel great. Okay, great. So if you're not feeling great, your thoughts are pretty crappy. How do you think that's going to represent with your tone and your voice and even the words that you choose? We know that 93% of all communication is nonverbal. Words do matter, but most of us don't remember what people say unless you've got that kind of brain. But tonality and how we feel or make someone feel is what they walk away with. But it's got to start with a person. And that's why I get them to sit up, drink lots of water. I'll have people put on Post-it notes on their computer or their desk going, people want to hear from me, or I love closing sales, or the next call is going to be a yes. Something so they've got a visual to go train the brain to get better thoughts so that you've got better talking tracks internally. Because it's almost like I can hear people's thoughts, which I can't. I'm not voodoo on that. But
No, I get what you're saying. You can almost sense it, feel it.
yeah, and particularly when you work in call centers, like there'd be days I would be listening to hundreds of calls. So you really have no other senses apart from what you're hearing. And I was like, as soon as I'd hear someone get into a call, I'm like, good luck on that one closing. They don't sound great. They don't sound confident. They're umming and ahhing and pausing at the wrong places because they're not prepared. And this customer is going to be the better salesperson and move them off the call by going, now's not a good time. And then you get the, when shall I call you back? And they go, anytime this week. And then they leave the call. I'm like, anytime this week? Nobody has that much open calendar.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. So I can hear it in the tone of the person's voice. Often I can hear it through the first breath that I hear coming through in a call. And call centers are good because you've got superpowers of hearing. But it's the breath. You can hear the, hello, it's Yvonne. So, and you go, oh my God, you just sighed.
Distressed, not a physiological side, distressed one.
It's like,
no, so
the
reason why it's been because you've trained at such a high level, where you talked about these wonderful results from getting the great performance from 31% to 76. It's these nuances, it's these tiny. I think people overlook them and they think it's all just semantic. Yeah. But you and I both know it's not, and you're way better at this than me. This is why I get wonderful guests like you guys on. Is like going. So when you listen to the call, I have guys that sets me in America, I have a guy that sets me here in Australia and New Zealand. Yeah. And I can tell straight away, and I listen to their calls. Obviously, I'm using AI a bit more, but first of all, I manually train them. Okay, did you see how you opened that call? I said your energy was really, really low. And it sounded like you didn't want to be there. And it sounded like you're on the end of the day and you're on your 50th call. Like that is not going to be great for you. And so I think what we're saying is collectively really, really pay attention.
Yes.
And take the time to train your team. And you can't train all of them. And we haven't got time to talk about who we train and who we're not. But we've been through the quadrants. Now, we talked about managers, Yvonne.
Yep.
You said something really interesting. You said your standards you walk past, the standards you accept.
Yes.
And I always say you get the teams you tolerate.
Correct.
And we talked about show me the manager and I'll show you the team.
Yeah.
Why is it the managers often resist being trained themselves? There we go.
Yeah, that's it. Well, the big resistance I get is either there's not the culture for high performance with managers, or the leadership team ahead of that prioritizing tasks and things, not developing the people at that management level. And so therefore, and that often then trickles down that there's not coaching on the floor, the shop floor, or wherever the business is, because the priority is still task or heavy compliance. I'm in businesses where they're very compliant oriented and they need to be. Yeah. But as I say, I don't care what industry you're in, whether you're selling cars. I work with some farm industry in a program that I run for a company here. But I say, whatever your industry in, you're in the people business first. So if you've got to invest in your people and see that that's going to be the priority. But if the leadership team above the management don't invest in the management, they keep pushing it down to the frontline team. There is resistance to that for me, but often I'm being brought in to work with that cohort in particular. But they're often starved as well. They're often only brought in to get constructive criticism or performance reviews, where they're not getting coaching from their leadership either. And if the leader themselves isn't getting coaching, well, then monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah, and it comes straight down. We're all mushrooms, aren't we?
Yeah.
Tell me then on that, the managers are resistant to training, maybe because they think it's somehow below them, or they don't want to expose their deficiencies to their team in terms of role and rank. But I find the best managers are the ones that want to be coached as well, because they want to turn up for their teams, right? So you talked earlier in the call around that holding space for the high performers is actually that kind of servant leadership where you're not, and I think you said that in a really beautiful way, you're not coaching them on what to do and how to get better. You're just making them be the best and perform the best, and letting getting the hell out of the way and getting everyone else out of the hell of the way.
Yeah, and I often find at times when I'm going with the managers, they also just need space, and they need time just to be able to vent and not feel that this could be threatening for their career development as well. And it's interesting, I run a program where one of my questions I ask the leadership team is, I want you to think of a time when you got some really good feedback. It might not have been great, it might not have felt good at the time, but it had a positive impact as to who you are as a leader. And sometimes it's brutal feedback. That's why I say it had a positive impact, but it might not have felt great at the time. And they'll often go, oh, I remember when I gave feedback. I said, no. When did you receive feedback? And I get blank faces. And I realize they're a starved audience for often feedback. And then when they go, oh, it was the principal of the business actually acknowledged me, and someone go, wow, you heard from him that he said that to you? And he goes, yeah. And that in itself had such a memorable moment. And then I'll get them to unpack what about it has made it so memorable. What do they do, or what did they not do? Yeah. And it's an interesting one, because when they start to think about, they struggle often to find times when they've had good feedback, or it's been quite early in their career, which also shows me that they're not getting enough feedback. And I really like the research that came out of Harvard in 2009. It's a bit dated now into some 2025, but it's got some good data to substantiate. And I liked it. They had a ratio of 6-1, 6 positive reinforcement to 1 constructive.
Great reminder.
And whilst I don't sit in coaching sessions counting to 6 to then give my constructive, I still have a real focus on over-delivering on good, genuine, positive reinforcing commentary and coaching, etc., because most of the time it's pushing against the current trend, which is heavy in constructive. And 9 out of 10 times I'm having to say to managers, I'd really invite you to remove constructive criticism from your language. I said, most people drop the constructive, hear the criticism, brace themselves for impact, and just deflect and defend. You're not giving anything useful there. You're just having a dialogue, and they walk away going, oh, I feel terrible now. And so it's twofold, really helping the managers recognize that there's a lot they are doing well, so that they do more of it, giving them space. And that's where I find I can break through some of that resistance. They're just often really starved for good quality feedback that's not performance management.
I like what you said around monkey see, monkey do. If they're not getting it from above, then it's just going to trickle down. And I see with managers, the ones that are really open, and I know that word is a bit nauseous, but vulnerable, coachable, open-minded, growth mindset, not fixing everything else. Last few questions, Yvonne. You have obviously got a lot of expertise in fast-moving consumer goods, retail, selling stuff, fast sales cycles potentially. My guys and girls, a lot slower. Sometimes they're buying a header tractor, could be 2-3 years in the making. What can my rural guys and girls learn from a whiz like you in the retail game, who comes in as a troubleshooter and goes, right, I'm going to get your inbound call center, retail, shop assistants, branch managers. I can see that's what you do.
They have a long game as well.
How can they learn from retail into rural? Because it's so fast moving retail. It's
I work with some businesses where they've got long-term, they're selling services, but they've got a 2 to 3 year cycle as well. They're not selling goods, engaging in businesses to come into the state, etc. The big thing is having a proper structure in place to keep a nice, consistent cadence, so that you don't drop off or a competitor comes in because they were more visible. That's the key thing I find. You just got to look at your nurturing aspect of your relationship with your client, because if you don't have good structure, it will fall out. And then I'm always looking for ways that I can get something of interest in front of that client without it feeling like, oh, they're trying to sell. She's here to sell. Is there an article going, hey, I just saw there was a new bit of machinery that came out of Sweden for this, this, and this. Now, they may have found it. We know that in sales, particularly now, people don't like to be sold to. I don't know if we really did, but even less now. There's so many ways that we can be sold to. AI being one of them, face-to-face, phone, internet, whatever. So I look to see how can I be adding value to my customer outside of it, just the touch point of selling. So is there something that I can educate them with? Customers want to be taken along the journey as an educated partner. And sometimes I can find information, or I'm looking at an article in an industry that they're in and go, oh, I just saw this article, I thought of you. Oh, thank you. I haven't seen that article. So I'm always looking to see what else can I be doing that adds value to that customer that's not related to the sale, but is helping me stay related to them. And that's that education piece.
I love that. Related to them rather than related to the sale. I've always teach my reps around being detached from the outcome and attached to the process. Because the more they're attached to the outcome, the more needy and desperate and salesy they get. And you just don't know I'm very active on LinkedIn. So I'm publishing a lot of content. I've got a team who help me with that. And look, if I would be you don't get a lot of like. It's so hard to get traction in all of these. But I say to all of my team members, make sure you've got LinkedIn, because people can stalk and look at you on LinkedIn and might sit there for years and then suddenly go, I must connect with that person because they're selling what I want. Now, that might not be the case in some of the regional or remote. Maybe the farmers aren't sitting there themselves on LinkedIn, but you might have some industries where keeping visible is going to be really important. And if it's for no other reason that you just don't know who's watching or someone who's going to connect you to someone. I had a business reach out to me last week and I said, how did you find out about me? And they said, oh, we saw that you worked with somebody else. They posted about you. The person inside of our business had worked with that person 5 years ago. And I was like, oh, there's like this all moving parts. Your second degrees and third degrees of separation, right?
Yeah. And look, for some industries, the audience might not be a LinkedIn person, i.e. might not be your farmers, but it's looking to see, well, where are they? Where are they going that you can be in front of them? What I love with regional or remote, so I do a lot of work with Toyota, and there was a series when I would go out regional or remote and run a program for them, particularly for the really remote dealerships. So they weren't coming into the metros, which is expensive. It's, they often don't have big teams. There's only two of them in the dealership. So we would go out, like I'd go to Dubbo, whatever. And when I've gone into other businesses where I've gone out into regional or remote, the fact that I've gone to them or at least met them halfway, blows their mind, where I'm like, this is a bit of an effort for me. It's a 6-hour drive, or I've done a 3-hour flight to get halfway to nowhere. But for them, they've driven 6 hours, like going to get milk for the morning. And they're like, thank you for coming to us. And I'm like, well, my pleasure. We want to help support you and you can't come to us. So even just doing road shows and being out in their environment, if they're a metro salesperson, I really saw that the regional or remote value that so deeply.
It's visibility and it's time. It's the gift of time. Yvonne, you have been an absolute treasure trove. Thank you for being so generous. Now, all my guests ask this question. If you could distill down one morsel of training experience from your career and all your experience working with these big companies, the Toyotas, the Woolies, if you could only give them one piece of advice to be successful in sales, what would it be and why?
Seek to understand. Ask better questions to understand what your customer needs so that you can then isolate what exactly are you going to give them. When I look at the format of, I've got a training model of CAPS, connect, ask, present, and serve. Most people in sales think that the pitching of their product is the sales, is closing the sale. And I'm like, no. I said, sales are won and lost by the questions we ask or don't ask. Question asking machine, the sale will take care of itself. You've got to have the product to present or the presentation of the product. But I said, you've got to figure out what questions can I ask to really uncover and really recognize what's the impact for this person if they take my product or not. And most of the time I find salespeople get the obvious answer. Oh, I asked the question. They told me the answer. I then move on to the next question. I'm like, no. Stay in that. Go deeper. Go deeper. What's the impact if you do take this? What's the impact if you don't? Let them marinate more in what the negative aspects are. They'll then jump into, oh, I need your product even more. But often they're so quick to go, got the answer, got another question, got the answer. Right, let me tell you all about our product. I'm like, your
Yeah,
product.
they don't. They sell too fast. I always say to my team, sell slow to sell fast,
Totally.
and
And
and,
same
and
with
get
managers.
curious.
Ask more questions. You got 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use
Yeah,
them in that ratio. And that's even with coaching. I find that leaders in business, they go in going, I'm going to tell you what to do. The coaching becomes just a telling session, not a
yeah,
coaching
yeah.
session.
One way, not. It's a monologue. It's a dream. Now you've got a nifty little tool, haven't you? It's a how confident my sales team tool. Is
Yeah,
this
it's
where?
a quiz.
Could,
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
quiz for managers and leaders to figure out 5 questions for them to really figure out how confident are their team, and so then they can figure out, well, where potentially are some of the gaps in their team.
awesome. Tell me where we can find that. So obviously they can connect with you on LinkedIn because we know you're
Yes.
on LinkedIn.
Yep.
But where do they find this quiz if they want to have a
Yeah,
quiz?
perfect. So it's on the front page of my website, which is yvonnehilsz.com, and there's a link that says take the quiz.
Excellent. Awesome. Love your energy. I can see no one, you would be irrefutable in terms of resistance on the training. You engage. I think you've given us wonderful advice around how to handle. I love your 4 quadrants. I love how you hold space for high performers. The standards that you walk past and the standards you accept. There's nuggets all the way through this episode. That'll keep our editing suite very, very busy. Thank you for being so generous with your time and with your expertise, Yvonne. We really appreciate it because we learn so much from other industries, you know, not sitting in our own little tunnel vision, rural, remote world. And I mean, the fact that you've trained the likes of Woolies and Toda means you certainly know a thing or two. So we really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all your knowledge with us.
Always nice to be able to share some golden nuggets, and always delighted at times as to what falls out when you train and coach so much. Interesting things come out, and it's like, oh, that's a nice little memory of a training opportunity, etc. That just helps to add some more variety for people to kind of reference and see. So it's good. I love this kind of stuff.
You keep doing the good work you're doing, Yvonne. They're lucky to have you.
Thank you so much. Lovely to meet you as well.